John, another day, another Brock Purdy story. The national media has realized a couple, maybe 2 years ago, that the 49ers quarterback situation is good for business. And so they've had these conversations a lot. I think that's why it's interesting. Breer, Silver, any of these guys, Peter King, they've been around the Niners organization quite a bit over the years talking about this topic. And so it's kind of well oiled when Breer texts somebody or Schefter or whoever that this is a conversation they've had a lot. So when Breer writes today this in the MMQB, among other things, but he wrote this: the Niners are hanging on to Brock Purdy's name first on the depth chart and are willing to do it even with his medical situation. It's very much indicative of where they stand. And with what's ahead, it makes sense for them to just allow for the situation with the other two quarterbacks, Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, to play out. That's part of it, not all of it. But what do you think of what Breer wrote today about Brock Purdy?
Well, I think part of it is he was on the ground floor at the Biltmore at the owners' meetings when Jed, John, and Kyle were just pretty open and talking, just as all these teams were. I mean, there's a lot of storylines that come out of that event because the heavy hitters, the people that have known these guys for a long time, including, the local reporters that know these guys, get to talk to them in a little more of a laid-back situation where you can have a cocktail with the guy and you can interact with them where they're not in front of said media on a Wednesday leading into week 4, right? It's completely different. I think the combine falls under the same category. When you have conviction on a player that's on your team, especially early on, like in the first couple of years of a guy, I think you're banking it obviously on the way the guy plays. This is a production-based business, but also what you see of him Monday through Saturday. His work ethic, his study habits, his practice habits, it's different for a coach, right? The players judge you as a teammate. I do think the coaches judge you how you interact with your teammates. And, a team like the 49ers, he's so just in tune with his top guys, getting a vibe for this guy. So I think when they have, quote-unquote, conviction on this player moving forward, it's a lot different than a lot of guys, especially high in the draft. Whoever gets picked, that GM and coach are going to come out and be happy on draft night. The draft video of Dan Campbell and his GM chest bumping, or, Howie Roseman landed whoever at number 10, or John Schneider, or whoever. There are a lot of variables that you cannot know for sure. These are educated guesses. Where once a guy's on your team, and the reason like players throughout the league, when they get extended after their 3rd or 4th year, you're basing that on information, tangible information that you have as a coach, as a GM, as a team. And while his sample size is clearly much smaller than a guy who's got to start every game, I do think it's enough of a sample size for, remember, it wasn't, their first year, they had a 5-game sample size with Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, I would say over the course of his career, he probably wasn't as consistently good as that 5-gamer. But for the most part, he gave them, when he was playing, some stability at the position that was better than over half the league. And given how talented their team was, it was more than quote-unquote adequate or whatever for them, right?
John, it was, if you just judge it in the window that it was elite. I mean, more than adequate. Like, the question with Brock Purdy is not, will he be that guy again? Only because that level of play almost feels too ridiculous to maintain. It's just, is he somewhere close to that guy? Or at least is he that guy? And then statistically, things will even themselves out over time. But yeah, adequate would be an understatement. I mean, it was incredible. It was an incredible level of quarterback play.
Yeah, I just think when you are going all in on a guy, whether you're going to name him your starting quarterback, whether you're going to pay a guy, you just want, when he's on the field, to feel pretty good about his level of play. And with Purdy, like, he has a long way to go, right? With a lot of quarterbacks in the league, like the Chargers, obviously, I would even put the Eagles. Like, is he just going to be an MVP level player moving forward? Well, I think we all have to acknowledge he's really good. I mean, he's got a unique skill set. But is like that his level, what we saw in the Super Bowl? Is he rattling off 90% of his time is going to look like that, and he's just going to be consistently a top 3 or 4 quarterback? Because if so, there is no amount of money you can pay the guy and not hesitate. Like Aaron Judge. Is he just proving when he's on the field He's the best player in the big leagues, him or Ohtani? Because if that's the case, as long as he's healthy, that contract, they wouldn't even hesitate. Like, that's 100% an easy contract to give the guy. He's going to have an MVP level for the next 3 or 4 years. And with Purdy,
But they'll still be paying it in year 7, 8, 9, 10.
True, and that's what makes baseball a lot different than football. But if Brock Purdy can just give him that level of play for the next 3 years until they have to figure out a contract, 49ers are in very, very good shape.
Yeah, great shape. That's quarterback extension shape, right? I mean, we're talking you extend a guy playing at the level that he's playing, and maybe you do it really quickly. One thing I wonder, I went back and looked, you remember this, and this is what this conversation started making me thinking is like, we've got quotes from what the players say on the record, but some of the stuff that they say about Brock is stuff, if Trey was the starter, they said about Trey, and if Jimmy's the starter, they say about Jimmy. Remember last year, the player vote? Remember how many captains the Niners had last year?
I don't remember. Tom Sula had about 75. I'm pretty sure it was under 10. 7?
Close. 6. And I think the way Shanahan painted it was Trey just finished outside of the top 6, 7th in the voting, right? Now, that happened in early September. Jimmy Garoppolo returned to the Niners in late August. And remember, Jimmy, when he was their quarterback, had a C on their chest. So I'd wonder if Garoppolo was long gone, maybe Trey Lance gets the captainship. Maybe it's harder for those guys when they see Jimmy staying on the team. They're obviously removing Jimmy's captain because they kind of have to, but you can't vote for Jimmy.
Not allowed to be a captain when you demand a trade allegedly through a reporter in the offseason.
Debo just on the outside looking in. You do wonder if Debo's going to get a spot or if Shanahan. Jimmy Ward is the only spot that's open. Eric Armstead, Fred Warner, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Jimmy Ward, Nick Bosa were the captains last year. So, early September rolls around. I do wonder what the players will vote because
could see if he's a super locked in, non-fuck around guy, Hargrave immediately just being sweet.
Hargrave?
Yeah, I don't know enough about like the guy beside him being an ass kicker player, but if he's just, from what I've heard, no nonsense, just kick ass, like you sometimes just get votes. Like I don't think Trent's some big rah-rah guy, but hey, were you going to not vote him the captain? If it's pretty clear like Hargrave's a top 5 player on the team.
What about Debo and or Ayuk?
It's, in fairness to receivers, beside like Jerry Rice, it's not really a captain position.
I wonder if Brock's
Larry
going to get a captain.
Maybe.
Based on the way he played last year. Like if you told me Brock was never hurt, I'd say Brock's going to get a C on his chest when this season starts. Would you agree? If the season had ended, whatever, let's just stop your knowledge of the season. You went into a coma in the first quarter of the Eagles 49ers game, and then you wake up today not knowing anything, and somebody asked, do you think they'll vote Brock a captain? Would you say yes, based on the way he played last year?
Yes.
So, the question I've got reading
and
that.
Russillo's done this too. I think like beside 3 or 4 a year, every starting quarterback is usually the captain, like captain.
Right.
It was rare. Like the 49ers were a rarity last season.
That's right. So it'll be interesting if he's kind of banged up or he's not 100% not banged up. If he's not 100% back, but he's going to be back week 2, but he's not going to be your week 1 starter. Does Brock Purdy get voted the captain by his teammates?
Hard to see. It'd be pretty nuts if he doesn't practice all training camp and he's a captain. Like I'd say that'd be pretty telling of just the way people think of him, and that reflects why Kyle Shanahan and the front office, and mainly Kyle Shanahan, not that the front office isn't behind him, but like he's leading that charge of this sentiment. Like I don't think Breer writes this if that's the sentiment of like the scouts, not the coaches. Like this is a coach-led sentiment.
Your source guessing Breer.
Yeah,
Shanahan.
Reiterated. Well, I just think that like Kyle is that you have to know where Kyle stands to say what the 49ers feel is on the
Breer
quarterback.
wrote today, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it to me, if he were a captain with, let's just put it at 2 or 3 practices, like that'd be insane. In sense of like this guy's going nowhere,
right? It'd be insane but it's understandable based on what he did last year was insane, right?
Insane in the sense that like that's pretty telling, like how fast that he gained equity in this locker room.
Yeah.
to go from Mr. Irrelevant to being a captain after you spent all offseason in a sling/brace.
/ robotic arm.
Because one thing, even Breer wrote this, and I think the 49ers, definitely Kyle, wanted to pump the brakes, as John Lynch said, basically August 1st, and Kyle's like, week 4. So, I mean, their timelines were 2 months differentiated from each other. They're still, and I think Brock, I saw some quotes, local radio, I think down in Tucson, must have a friend maybe hosting a show.
No. Manuch is his like personal QB coach. Manuch is like a high school. Yeah. I've been on a show before talking like Pac-12 football.
Have you met him in person?
I've not met him in person. No, but he seems like a really nice guy. But he trains a bunch of
high talk to Manuch.
Yeah, we should talk to Manuch.
So yeah, that makes sense that he just said that, because even Brock was like, no one really knows until we get this off and we start throwing, which is, common sense, right? No one knows. There's you're in a sling, you're in a brace, you have a broken foot. Like until you take the apparatus, the cast, the sling, you don't
the stitches
know.
Come out, right?
Yeah.
Make sure there's no infection.
100%.
Yeah.
It's a good get by Manuch.
What? Because there was like, he's like, it popped up in my YouTube feed, and he's like, see you back out there soon, Brock. Like he works Brock out. He's like, Brock's, it's Brock and whoever else. Tyler Shuck. I don't know, probably.
Well, Brock probably, this morning was at whatever facility in Chandler, Arizona, next to like 3 former first-round picks working their elbows. He's like this.
Yeah.
Probably the smallest guy in there, right? Because most of these pitchers now are like 6'4".
Him, DeGrom.
You, Darvish.
Bumgarner. Did Bumgarner get sent back?
Got sent back to the minors?
No. Got sent back to Arizona from LA because had some arm. He gave up he gave up like 2 or 3 bombs the other day to Trace Thompson.
God.
And so they're like, he looks tired. Let's send him back to Arizona, which is it's a little early in the season to be worn out. But
guys, April 3rd.
Yeah, it's a little early. People have suggested that in the chat here that Christian McCaffrey might get one of the captaincies, which would make a lot of sense.
I feel like he's trending toward a lock. Yes.
So, I mean, Shanahan there might be more captains on this Niners team this year.
Agreed. That was another thing. We transitioned to this. You and I text about this because you forwarded me, I don't know if it was SportsCenter. It was a major account and you can find this on Twitter. You can find it on Instagram. The brand of Christian McCaffrey, which I would say peaked that last couple years of Stanford when he was competing to win the Heisman Trophy. Then when he got to the NFL, Cam Newton's his quarterback, and he has like a historic, right? He was the first player to have 100 yards non-quarterback rushing and receiving. I forget the exact, but he was an early on star in the NFL. It was clear, like, God, he's way better than most people thought, because people thought it was crazy that he went 8th. So
wasn't it him, Walter Payton, and Roger Craig? Isn't that the 1,000 club?
That might be it. It was a small list, and the other 2 guys, I guess Craig's not technically a Hall of Famer. The greatest running back, many consider that, are Jim Brown and Roger Craig, who a lot of people argue is like one of the more underappreciated players in NFL history. Obviously has some rings and was part of one of the great dynasties. But then the last couple years of the injuries.
Oh, I'm sorry. Marshall Faulk and Roger Craig. 1K, same season.
So, Marshall's one of definitely, a Hall of Famer and one of the more versatile players in the league history. Is that McCaffrey's star had just dimmed. And that happens when you get injured. That happens when you play on a team that sucks. And it's not like he's on the Packers during a down year. The Panthers are down. Like, they're kind of out of sight, out of mind. And I would say since this trade, he then dominates, right? He was clearly one of the Niners' best players. He was a huge reason that they kept rolling. He helped Brock Purdy out a lot. He was awesome. But it feels like his star, is poof. Like, he's just like, Kittle, Kelsey, DK, AJ, McCaffrey. Like, he just talked about, non-quarterback, one of the stars of the league. And that was clearly not happening. Now, I follow him on social. He actually is a pretty low-key guy. Like, he's not, Kittle is much closer to, Pat McAfee than he is to some, some low-key player.
I think McAfee, I got a Bleacher Alert that McAfee was quoted maybe yesterday as saying at WrestleMania or whatever it was that Kittle could be a wrestler when he retires. Or is that?
Yeah,
I think those two got connected over the weekend.
Well, because they were, I don't know, in the ring at WrestleMania together.
Oh, they were in the ring together. Okay. I avoided that story. I didn't want to see Kittle to sprain an MCL or something. So I'm glad he came out of it okay.
Yeah. So McCaffrey's star has just jolted again. I mean, he feels like one of the go-to for social media, for just the way people talk about it. Like he just feels much more in the vernacular again of talked about like one of the elite players in the biggest league in this country.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a large part because he's on the fucking 49ers.
100%. And partly the way he gets to do everything, right? Like I saw a highlight. Maybe you sent it to me. Maybe this is how our conversation started. Somebody put together like
you sent me the him working out, and like I saw Kittle and a bunch of people were making fun of him for it because he's weird
what was the thing he was doing? The high legs, and then somebody tagged us and said shave it or save it, which I said save it on McCaffrey.
Yeah, he's trending though. I mean,
it's as you like to say the troops are.
Well, I'll tell you, guy, the worst one going right now, and it ain't even close, is Kevin Durant. And I would imagine Kevin Durant, like in society, when the camera's not coming from above, he's above everybody.
Right.
But when he plays in the game, guy, it's hideous. Like I'm sorry, Kevin, but it's an awful, awful look. It's patchy. I mean, it's fucking bad. McCaffrey just has your basic bald spot, which grows. I mean, McCaffrey's not 35 like Kevin. He's 26. So once he's our age, it's clear where he's headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he could get some. He could go to a Turkish resort and come back with a full head of hair
easily. I think what's hard isn't his dad have a full head of hair.
I think so.
Yeah, I feel like some of his brothers do. In my family.
Ed's got great hair.
Yeah, see, in my family, everyone was bald, so you just kind of embrace it. I can understand the family dynamics if you're like, wait, my dad's has a great head of hair. Some of my brothers have good head of hairs. People are like, well, it's your mom's side. Well, it's like so I got screwed with that. My swimmer had that, and all my brothers are good. Like it would piss you off.
Yeah, but then we're like Rich Kleiman, who's Katie's business partner, and looks good. So I don't.
Yeah,
he's been it's part of the conversation. Anyway, where were we? Oh, you wanted to see this on Brock here. You just pulled up the estimated points per play. Estimated points added per play among rookie quarterbacks from Summer Sports, SUMER. Rookie quarterbacks 2016-2022, number 1, Dak's rookie season. Number 2, Brock's rookie season. 3, Deshaun Watson. Herbert. Then there's kind of a drop-off to Herbert, then another drop-off to Mac Jones, Joe Burrow, then another drop-off to Mayfield, on and on and on. This would represent a very excellent rookie season relative to. We've had some really good quarterbacks come in the league the last 7-8 years. They all have gotten good fast. They all haven't been great as rookies, right? Like Josh Allen got good really quickly. He wasn't quote unquote great as a rookie. Obviously, Mahomes didn't play as a rookie. But Brock got thrown right in there and had one of the most impactful rookie seasons from a quarterback we've seen in the last few years.
I actually think one thing that parallels a lot those other two guys that he's right between. Remember the Texans had been
Dak and Deshaun?
Yeah, obviously one was a first-round pick, the other was a fourth-round pick. But remember, when Tony Romo was like in shambles and was crying, it's because he had been on record, this is the best team I've ever been on going into the season. So when his back broke, he not only knew his career was in jeopardy, but like this was his opportunity to be really good. They had the best O-line in the league. It's Zeke. He was sweet rookie and early on in his career. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jason Witt was still on the team. They had good offensive weapons. And Deshaun Watson took over for a team. Like, what had the Texans been missing? They had been like 9-10 win team with Bill O'Brien competing to like make wild cards. They didn't have a quarterback. And their team was good. And like Purdy, he just inherited a good team. Now, I would say his team probably top to bottom was the best of like that little trio. And, I would say Kyle based on resume and in the playoffs, better than Bill O'Brien and definitely better than Jason Garrett. But this was why we pounded the table for Trey Lance. Like, it doesn't get any better than this. When you get to take over for a good team, most guys take over for shitty teams. Like what Joe Burrow did in 2020, that team drafted number 1 overall. And they did not have Jamar Chase. So, I mean, and their line, I'm pretty sure, was horrendous that year. So, like, in context, if you're going to, try to compare all this stuff, what Joe Burrow's doing is more impressive than what Dak Prescott's doing because his team was fucking horrendous, or even Brock Purdy. But it does shine the light of what Brock Purdy did is why we were so high on, like, God, this is an incredible landing spot for a top 5 pick. Just turns out that that's, whether it's his fault, not his fault, injury, whatever, it was an opportunity that got missed, potentially.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because we've said, oh, God, it does. We reevaluate kind of how tough it was for Trey. But then Brock was a rookie and stepped right in, and it worked to his advantage. It did not work to Trey Lance's advantage to be in the situation. Now, they both didn't have the same kind of college upbringing, right? And that Brock played a ton of football, like as much football as anybody played in college football in the last 3 years. And Trey had not, which made them different. They had different needs coming into the league. But it's hard to say, God, I won't ever look at, and you and I have said this, we'll evaluate these situations for young quarterbacks differently, even though in the history of time, being around better players is never a disadvantage unless you really need to be allowed to make a bunch of mistakes and play freely, right? Which is kind of the Wiseman. Maybe Trey Lance needed to be allowed to just play freely and make mistakes and not have the amount of pressure that a good team puts on every game and every play.
I think in life, reps matter. Experience matters. I mean, it's what we hang our hat on as Cal Poly grads. Learn by doing, right? Just the more you do something, especially if you have any quote-unquote talent in that specific niche, you should get better with time, right? Think about, on the flip side of Wiseman, Gary Payton. How many reps did Gary Payton get in his life? I mean, multiple-year starter, 4-year guy in college, right? So he played a bunch of college basketball. Then he bounced around forever, like getting G League, and did he ever? I don't know if he played in European basketball.
I don't think he did.
But he was like, he played G League nonstop, games. It just is borderline impossible to get better at something by just not playing. And then you get to a point in sports specifically for a team, like, we need you to play now. And if you're not ready, like the way this business works, we just got to find someone who is more ready than you. And that's, I think, what Breer alluded to last week with a bunch of people, of just like the 49ers are no longer in that business of like, seeing what we got. Just like the Warriors got to the point with James Wiseman, we're just not in that business. We understand that in 5 years, this may look foolish, but where we are right now, we're not like, everyone always tells you with stocks, like long-term. Well, what if you need whatever, $50,000 right now? It's like, you might just need to sell a certain stock. Well, in 5 years, like that stock could go up 4x. Well, it's like, I needed whatever right now. I didn't have, time wasn't on my side.
Yeah. Or you might have sold it 1 year ago. Right.
Yeah.
And at the time you'd be like, God, I hate to have to sell this. And then it worked out within the next 12 months to be a blessing that you had to sell it.
I would say the last time, when you specifically look at Kyle, has pivoted in a quarterback situation. Now, it's different because there were a lot of rumors at the time that Dan Snyder led the charge for RG3 and that the Shanahan contingent of Kyle and Mike.
And Sean and the other Mike and the other Matt.
Yeah, I'd be fascinated to get their opinion. But specifically, I remember in Philly, it was like, I don't know if Mike and Kyle are in love with this idea, but it's not their choice. But they did allow, like, Dan was like, you can take another quarterback throughout the draft, and they took Kirk. So maybe they're biased to begin with, but they hammered it like, we think this guy was better by like year 2. Now, granted, RG3 got hurt. So once they've had evidence, like over time, they were proven right. And it'd just be fascinating to see if over time, sometimes you get lucky, right? Like, this is why we hammered the no Mac Jones. Like, God, you just can't take him number 3. You see Bill Belichick would not commit to him as the starter in Arizona? Like, when being asked about, like, when he was getting back and forth with the different reporters, he just wouldn't do it. Now, it's not like he said it's an open competition, but he didn't just say Mac Jones is our starter. Mm-hmm. So that draft is not aging well.
No, with the exception of the first pick.
And Justin Fields still now has some time to, I would say, improve drastically as a quarterback, but as a throwing quarterback, he can.
But it hasn't aged well. I mean, we're still open-minded on him, but if he'd been the second pick, I think it would feel differently if Fields had been the second or third pick and was playing this way.
Agree, but they did trade a first-round pick to move up like 10 spots.
No, I'm not saying that I'm just saying it would be even accelerated more if he was the second or third pick. That it's.
You think he gets a little bit of a pass being like 10 or 11?
I think I think it's a little pass being 10 or 11. I think he gets a little pass because there were so many people going into the draft said, "Oh, he's not any good. He's not any good." That then there's this like, "Oh, he's got a shot to prove people wrong" kind of energy that circles the argument, and I think that helps it.
The specific knock, and I was a big fan. I was pounding the table. The Niners should take him at 3. The knock by true football people and people like internally in the league that questioned was like his ability to process and throw. It's kind of been the knock on him as a player. Just like, is he NFL quality thrower?
Yeah. That's why I always laugh. I bring it up all the time when we talk about the new age of quarterback is mobility. The stiff quarterback is dead. And yet with every mobile quarterback, we're just trying to find a guy that can throw from the pocket still. Right.
You have to be able to throw from the pocket, but the mobility has to come because you're running a lot now.
But if you were a 10 at one skill and a 2 at the other, give me 2 mobility, 10 thrower, because 2 thrower and 10 mobility does not last. Now, what I really want is like 7 thrower, 7 mobility. Like, that's awesome, right? That's what you're going
for. In fairness,
for.
though, the stiff guy the guy that can't move doesn't really exist in college anymore.
Purdue, they'll play that guy. Iowa will play that guy.
When I mean for a quarterback, like legit prospect in the draft, like the Phillip Rivers.
Levis is mobile.
Yeah, much more mobile than like the 2000 quarterback crop of, I guess, Goff. But for the most part, I would say the last 10 years, much more mobility in first-round picks than non-mobile quarterbacks.
Yeah. Would have been interesting to see in hindsight now Trey Lance at like a Ohio State or, I mean, C.J. Stroud is mobile, is like the right amount of just mobile enough, but he's not Anthony Richardson, right?
No.
Or Eric Crouch.
Yeah, Tommy Frazier.
Scotch on the chat says, that's his name. He says, they will trade Lance, rush Purdy in, get him hurt, go to the lose in the playoffs with Darnold. If you don't like that, you don't like 49er football. Go Kings.
Playoff bound.
3 seed, baby. Yeah.
I wonder, one thing will be fascinating, if you don't like that, you don't like 49er football, is a Warriors home playoff game and the first Kings home playoff game. I'm fascinated to see the different price points because I think it's dramatically cheaper to go to the Kings in theory, but I don't know.
I was talking to my dad yesterday because he and my mom are going to the Kings Warriors game at Golden One on Friday.
Oh,
like this coming Friday.
That's a big one, guy.
And well, my dad was like, I hope the game matters. Like, I hope it means something. There's a chance that like everything's kind of figured out by then. And I said, oh, it will 100% mean something. Even if everything's been figured out. And you and I have seen this firsthand, like watching, the Giants teams win those World Series. Then the Warriors kind of go from, this little engine that could to the powerhouse. Is like there's a year or 2 window where it doesn't matter. Your team they could have wrapped up their seed 7 weeks ago. And it's just going to be a zoo and a party, and it's going to feel like game 1 of the World Series or the NBA Finals or the Super Bowl in there because Kings fans have just been waiting. So just like any chance they get, they're going to want to beat the Warriors so bad in a game that like the starters will both no one will play after halftime probably, but it won't matter. Like people will be going ape shit in that place.
That's a good game. I think Golden One, just a badass place.
Yeah,
they did a good job.
They did an awesome job.
they did a good job.
Yeah. Somebody said, Jaron said, use check. Feels like Niner football again.
I wonder how many fullbacks get drafted.
What's the how many guys wearing 44 from?
One thing I heard,
pass catchers wearing 44.
That tells you everything to need to know about this game, about like the changing of college football, is historically like the amount of defensive tackles and defensive ends at the combine were relatively similar. Like the ratio of maybe there were 45 defensive ends that went to the combine and there were 38 defensive tackles. It was almost 2-to-1, 250 down edge rushers at the NFL combine. And I think there was like 41, maybe the number was like 45, but it was over 40 edge rushers. And there were less than 20 defensive tackles. And then the scout I talked to was like, it represents that everything is such a spread out game. These big body guys do not exist in college football anymore.
What do they do? Move to offense?
No, they just don't.
Slim down?
Yeah, you just, the bigger guys are like DeForest Buckner. They're more linear than the 330-pound guy, but you need those guys in the NFL.
Right.
And this speaks to the quarterback. It's why all these quarterbacks now have to be much more mobile because they're running for their lives. And if you're just stiff, you're probably more likely to pitch now.
Baseball?
Yeah.
Oh, stiff quarterback. Yeah. Yeah. I
was telling you actually,
But
and this guy looks like a NFL athlete because he probably could have been. I ran into Jeff Samardzija, again, run in. He passed me in a...
You think?
Think 95%. And I was thinking about saying something like, hey, man, I used to live in the Bay. And then I also thought, and this is a weird time in society where there is a lot of evidence is the wrong way to put it, but just words by me on the internet of talking shit about that human. Even though I had no issue with that human, I just remember watching him play a lot for the Giants, be tweeting, probably talking some shit how he wasn't
overrated
good.
or something like that.
Yeah, just a lot of just your classic sports fan on the couch talking some shit.
Right.
It is documented.
Uh-huh.
But I don't have anything personal against the guy. And if I saw him like, hey, man, what can I say? You just gave up a lot of home runs.
Shark.
Yeah. But those interactions in society of just the casual fan that sitting on their couch like, God, this guy stinks. But then if you meet him, you might like him,
100%. There's no question about it. That's why, the footage of it's different because it's a visiting team, but like Anthony Rendon grabbing a guy by the jersey, which how did he even get that close and get a hold of his jersey? That's where it gets real, where it's like you're yelling bitch at a guy from the stands. Like, whatever, it's not even real. Like, like you kind of, I think the fan assumes the player just doesn't really pay attention to it because fans must yell all kinds of stupid shit all the time. But Anthony Rendon, he's giving the Angels 11 homers for their $100 million. It's like
100. I thought it was like 3.
So far, he's gotten 100 million. He's on edge. He's on edge. The Angels already told there's some guy who normally comes on their pregame show was already, I saw today on the internet, disallowed. He's not allowed to come on because it's an upbeat show and he's too negative. They're on edge. Angels are on edge here early in the season, John. A lot of pressure.
But that clip that went viral of Rendon basically grabbing the guy, it looked like by the neck of his collar. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes when those videos go viral, it happens less now at zoos because I think zoos are pretty good. But if you go to one of those zoos that's like, is this really a zoo or is that just a fence with a fucking lion in it? And the guy gets too close and he gets his hand, the lion or the gorilla or whatever grabs his hand. And
they like hold on to the toddler. The mom and the gorilla are both pulling on the toddler.
Exactly. And then somehow they rip it out. A lot of times you go, the thing's never going to bite you. Every once in a while, though, like that guy honestly could have just been like, you suck, you bitch. Just saying, half the people just walk on by. Rendon just had a fucking enough and grabbed the guy. Because I'm on Team Rendon. Like, nothing should happen to him. He didn't assault him or anything. I think it's fair to say that guy probably crossed the line. Because I always have an issue. One thing, I'm sure you've seen this go viral. Like Kyrie Russ, stop kicking people out of the game for saying you suck.
Stupid.
You're not allowed to do that anymore. Like, how about this? You get 2 people kicked out a season as an NBA player, and then you're capped. Like, you've hit your quota.
Yeah.
Especially the guy sitting in the front row on the road paying a fucking... Google how much NBA tickets cost. Because I was thinking, like, should I go the first round of the Suns if it's Suns Warriors? Holy cannoli. that guy is paying so much money, he's allowed to heckle you, Russ. Now, if they say something outrageous, which it doesn't feel like I'm sorry. Like Kyrie feels like the guy that cried wolf, and he gets people kicked out every game he's on the road. He's pointing at him out. Russ, same thing. Like
what,
it's a
my
joke.
thing is like, why doesn't somebody go? No, we're not kicking him out.
Well, I guess the one that the last Russ, the guy was at Memphis, came back. Like they haven't kicked him out the last two, but they did.
Well, that's the other thing
him.
on the road. It's like what the visiting team's like. This guy's in your dome. Great.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there is a line, but so I don't know what those guys said. I wouldn't say I'm Team Rendon. I'm also not Team Fan. To me, that scenario just worked out fine. Like I wouldn't punish him, but I wouldn't. The fan gets nothing either. Like that thing.
That's my point. That's my point.
Yeah. Now the guy what player knocked somebody's hat off the other day because they were heckling him, and then
Baseball?
the fan. No, might have been was it a basketball arena? The fan is like suing for assault. He just walked up and like hit the guy's hat off. Also, get out of here with that. Like, there's a certain level. You say stuff, you give up a little bit of your personal space. You start yelling at somebody, calling them bitch.
I thought Rendon did enough to like whatever you said, bro, ain't gonna fly. But he didn't cross the line of like throwing him over the thing and body slamming him. He grabbed him. Everyone looked like I wouldn't mess with that guy, and he kept on moving.
I also think my first inclination was that guy was probably being a jackass, and Rendon, like, if he was yelling bitch at you, because that's what he was grabbing the guy, like, you called me bitch. The guy's like, no, I didn't. That's a little. Can we thicken up and just keep on walking? That's why I think the Angels are a little on edge right now. A little early for that.
Paying a lot of money for a lot of people.
Baseball's back, baby. Baseball is back. There have been so many rule changes in baseball that I'd forgotten about the runner at second base. And I watched next inning Mariners, Guardians. And I flip it on in the 10th, and I'm like, God, there's runners everywhere. And then I realized, oh, yeah, it's ghost runner starts at second. So, I think they've done a great job because they've shaved like 30 minutes, and that's great.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. I think there's just this whole the whole conversation right now is how progressive baseball is, as opposed to for years, the conversation was how stuck in the past baseball was. And just that helps. Just the conversation. Honestly, the one that I've really enjoyed is getting rid of the shift. Sharp ground ball up the middle being a fucking out because the shortstop's playing in center field. That sucks.
Listen, I would say I'm probably a little more of a soccer connoisseur than you, but this is definitely no soccer podcast.
I didn't know this about you.
Well, when the World Cup comes on, I do consume a lot of World Cup.
Yeah.
And here's the one thing I will give the World Cup. I don't pretend to watch the EPL, though. Like, if I see a headline, I might click on a link. Mm-hmm. When you watch a soccer game, you know how much you're in for. Do you agree with that? Like, that 90 minutes now, you get the extra little
until
extra
they get
time.
to extra time, and then I have no clue.
But my point is, like, general idea, it's going to be a couple hours.
Yeah.
You're not getting a 4-hour soccer match.
Basketball's that way, too, for the most part.
Yeah, the other sports with the actual clock are that way. And it's why we complain. We'll see in the national championship game tonight and in the NBA, sometimes the review process is like it elongates the game unnecessarily so. Where in baseball, like one of the things they always hung their hat on is like there's no clock. And then it jumped the shark. It's like, I'm sorry. Like I am so behind. They play so many games and the games would just last forever. And a lot of people like Guy Haberman celebrated the history of the game and hated the runner on second and the robo-umps and all this stuff. And it's like,
I think I came around on the runner on second very quickly.
The only thing that needs to be discussed is we can't have 162 4-hour products in 2023. But if you get me 2.5 hours, I didn't even watch that much baseball this weekend. But I know when I come last night to check out Bochy, who's given fucking Ravage a tour of his office, you can tell Bruce is like, I don't even know what the hell's going on in this thing. They had all these sweet offices. It looked pretty cool in there. It looked like LSU's football offices or something. It was crazy. But the point, it's just rapid fire. It's quick. It's quick. It's quick. And that, to me, is our society now. And that's what baseball, like, here's what else I know in baseball. If the Yankees are playing, Judge is going to get 10 days off throughout the year. But more often than not, if Stanton doesn't have a pulled hammy, those guys are going to be in the lineup.
He will.
Basketball doesn't have that. No one fucking plays. Not a soul. So baseball, my guys play, and now it's fast. I'm telling you, the position for non-football in America, the hierarchy of sports is wide open. I can see a comeback for baseball.
I hope so. I think they've done a lot of the right things. Expanded playoff, that helps. The runner at second helps. You know what I didn't – the runner at second is an old rule, but
I don't even see the players aren't even bitching about like the clock and stuff. Did you see the Marcus Semien interview last night after the Ranger game?
What did he say?
Well, they come to him. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna need you to fill 45 minutes because because the game ended way before or whatever." And they were joking, but then they asked him about the pitch clock, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, we had one tonight. We had a strike or a ball or whatever the rule was on that individual instance." He's like, "We're getting used to it. I enjoy it. I think we'll have no problem kind of adapting." Because typically I would say players are the first to like, "This is bullshit."
Yeah,
in any sport.
Did you see Giants-Yankees Saturday? Giants closer Doval was it Saturday? They won game 2. Yeah, Saturday. Comes out of the bullpen. Before he throws a pitch, ball. Wasn't ready fast enough. Then it happened. It happened again to him. Ball on.
So ball if pitcher's not ready, strike if batter's not ready.
Yes.
Correct?
So before he's even his appearance has begun, ball. So I do wonder if there's some tweaking for like a reliever coming out of the pen. Probably shouldn't start the 9th with a ball with a runner at second because he went 5 seconds. I would like to see them.
But you get delay games out of timeouts, kind of similar, right?
Yeah, no. And my point is he didn't say a word, didn't complain. Happened to him again that inning with Stanton at the plate. Didn't say a word, didn't complain. It's really bad situation to be in in that game, a 3-run game. So I do wonder. I don't mind with 30 seconds left a review taking too long in the national championship game tonight. I don't want it to take too long, but what I can handle that.
Agreed.
So I do wonder, in the postseason of baseball games, 9th inning, Game 7 of the World Series, runner at second, should we bang a guy a ball because he took 5 extra seconds? I wouldn't mind seeing in those spots. It's been suggested 3-run game in the 9th, you should allow a little more time for the game to be played, but.
Well, for example, the San Diego State was at Creighton. Remember that end of that game, the review of the pass. It took a while.
Yeah.
But it's okay, this is go to the Final Four. No one's complaining.
Yeah.
But that January 1st of Game 10, let's pick up the pace, guys. Yeah. Right?
And 162, this is about the whole thing. It'll all come out in the wash. Let's just figure out who's good, who's not. In the end, you'll win 85, you'll win 65, and 10 seconds in April wasn't the difference.
I'm just a big believer in all sports pace of play. Golf, guys that take a long time, let's go. Football, I think for the most part in the NFL, if you notice, when you watch, think about this when you're watching games this fall, the first half of NFL games goes by really fast. The second half slows down a little bit, but the first half, you'll sit down at 1:30 to watch the 49er game. You'll look up, it'll be 2:10, and you're like, we got 3 minutes left to go in the second quarter. But then the game elongates as the second half slows down a little bit. I love it.
One take, what theory, not take. I do too. I'm with you. I wonder what it'll look like June, July, August, September. Are these pitchers, do the pitchers get tired faster? Because I flipped on some of the Braves Nats game yesterday. Just because I wanted to see the Nats have this guy Mackenzie Gore who was a top pick pitching, and the Braves have a first round pick pitching. And one of the things they were talking about was just how for a rookie pitcher, there was no time. You give up 3 guys get on base in the first inning, you have no time to collect yourself. You don't.
But don't they do that in the minors?
Yeah, they've had it now in the minors too. The point was just in your first big league start. How's this guy going to handle if it starts unraveling? He doesn't really get to take a lap around the mound and kind of take a breath. You just got to go. So I wonder if it'll require fitness from pitchers a little more. Just, I've seen a few bellies out there on the mound the last few days, and I wonder if everybody's ready for it, the big league guys. But
Samardzija looked like he was in pretty good shape at AJ's. I'll tell you that.
Alleged Samardzija. I mean, it had to be, right? Not too many guys with the goatee and the long hair. 6'4", 6'5".
If that wasn't Samardzija, there are less than 5 humans in America with that body type, that pirate goatee, that are over 6'4" with a ponytail. I mean, he didn't have a pony. He kind of just had it wrapped in a bun, not fully flowing.
Your dream hair.
Oh God, my dream body type. Like, you just see that guy,
Yeah.
you're like, I just want to fucking look like that. You know, I don't even think he's played in a couple years, and he just
No, he hasn't played since 20.
just looks like at any moment he could just show up at a pool party, and he's like just stands out. You know,
Yeah. What's the old was it a Louis C.K. joke? Skinny guys at a bar. I'm just here for the free sex.
I think it's skinny tall guys.
So, who you got? Live or the field this week at Augusta National?
I think I'll take the field.
I saw, whose quote did I see? Was it Koepka that was like, if one of the live guys has a chance to win, all the live guys will be around the green?
It was Greg.
Oh, it was Norman said that?
Yeah, and the comments were just classic. Like, if Koepka misses the cut, there is 0% zero chance he's still, like, none of these. Sergio Garcia, like, none of you guys are fucking gone. There was a tweet this morning that was like, Tiger's out for his practice round with Freddie Couples, Tom Kim, and Bryson DeChambeau. And everyone's like, what? Because Bryson had said last week that Tiger
Rory.
cut off contact.
Oh.
Then the Golf Channel quoted it. We typed. It was actually Rory, not Bryson. People like, yeah, no shit. Tiger's not playing with any of these guys.
What if, I mean, would it be an all-timer if Koepka, who was, when he was on the tour, was just the all-time John Deere's getting no energy from Brooks, Majors are getting all the energy from Brooks. It would be, not that I'm rooting for Brooks, but it'd be a pretty legendary remember me if Brooks Koepka. Like, DJ won it, whatever. But if Brooks won it when everyone loved counting him out and then is kind of just forgotten about him, that'd be pretty impressive.
I do think it's going to get a lot of eyeballs if there are multiple big name live guys and some of the star,
I agree.
A Rory, Rahm. It'll be. I think last year, I think at the PGA Championship, Bryson and Dustin, I think both finished like 6th. They weren't shown on television very often. Well, the Masters runs the TV. Like, and I've heard Jim Nantz talk, like, they tell you what to talk about. And their big thing is, like, we invite you to this tournament. This is an invitation only. It's the smallest field in golf. It's 89 people of all the majors. There's no, like, hiding if Brooks is tied for second. Like, you show his shots. So it's not going to be one of those, like, there's Bryson's making a run here and they're never showing his shots. So I really hope that, and it's really can only be like 3 or 4 of the guys. It'd be DJ, Cam Smith. Brooks just won yesterday at Live Golf Orlando. They played at a local muni. Oh. He did win $4 million, but
Jim Nance's last championship game tonight, John. Enjoy. If you're catching this after the fact, then that was the last time you see Nance do college basketball.
You think it sucks that he got a shitty kind of Final Four in terms of name brands?
No, I was thinking about that. Like, I don't, because if it was Duke, let's say, instead of San Diego State, I was more into the FAU San Diego State game because it was those two teams. And I'm like, one of these teams that nobody ever thought was going to go to the national championship game is about to go to the national championship game. And they played like it. Like, it turned out to be a great game. So I did wonder watching the game if the guys if like Grant Hill, Raft, and him were like, they were pretty relaxed during that game. Like, if it feels a little different to them. But he's got a shot to call what'll be one of the greatest tournament championships ever. If San Diego State wins the national championship, it'll go down in history.
He did get Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, Villanova last year.
So, yeah, and that was great. I mean, but what's another Duke championship when he could call FAU's? I think would have been the most unique if FAU had won the title tonight. But
yeah, I mean, I listen. Maybe we're a little biased, being, from California State School kids. They're enormous underdogs. I mean, there's almost 3 to 1.
7.5. I think it's the second largest championship underdog ever.
And like you told me before we hopped on, their path. It's not like they knocked out Duke and Gonzaga and UCLA, but it would be because they're never going to win a football national championship. It's as good as the school can humanly possible do. Like, to win the. Honestly, I was thinking about this. Just being in the Final Four, San Diego State, that's an incredible accomplishment.
It is.
I mean, if I would have told you when you were at Fresno State, and the basketball program had some success right before, we graduated high school because Tarkanian, what were the chances of them, like, getting the Sweet 16 would have been an enormous.
Would have felt like a championship.
The Final Four? Now, you could argue Fresno State cares about sports a little more than San Diego State, but
San Diego State's been good at basketball.
they have.
Sustained run.
Would you see that guy, their coach? Was it
Brian
that,
Dutcher?
was
Or Steve
Fisher's
Fisher.
assistant coach for like almost 30 years.
Yeah. And, Steve Fisher was the Michigan coach.
Yeah. So, and he kind of got them rolling, didn't he? Like
Yeah,
Kawhi, he was Kawhi's coach.
He was Kawhi's coach, yeah. So,
I mean, UConn winning. I mean, what's this? Their 4th title in 20 years?
yeah, I mean, Calhoun won 2, and then somebody else won 1.
Well, I saw a clip of Dan Hurley was like, I got 3 NBA players, so it's just about me getting the other 5 or 6 guys ready to go around them. like their team is, pretty good.
What the heck? Aztec! I don't know what Nance will say tonight.
Do you think they got a chance to win?
I do, because UConn's average margin of victory in the national title game. And again, some of you might be listening to this afterwards. You know what happened. UConn's average margin of victory, I think, is like 18.5 or 20.5 in this tournament. But they haven't played now, albeit, San Diego State's defense's numbers come against their league and stuff. But they haven't played a team as good defensively as San Diego State. San Diego State's one of the oldest teams, so they're like physical, they're big. Like, I think they've got
they look like NFL players.
Well, Matt Bradley, a bunch of them. Matt Bradley from Cal is thick. He should go play tight end or defensive end or something.
I'm a huge sucker. This is why I've always been inclined to the Harbaugh family. I just love when there's just a family of coaches, and like the dad was the crazy coach who the kids idolize, but the kids end up going way farther than the dad, right? Because ultimately the Hurley's dad was just a high school coach, correct? He never coached at like Division I college.
Yeah, St. Vincent or whatever. No, not St. Vincent. Whatever.
And then I always also like when the more heralded brother actually doesn't go as far as Jim played in the NFL for 15 years.
Right.
Has never won a Super Bowl, has never won a national championship. John Harbaugh, Super Bowl champion, was like a backup at University of Indiana or something. Nobody ever remembers a play of that guy, and he's become like a rock star coach. And that kind of feels like Bobby Hurley, who's been famous since you and I were kids. I mean, he's one of the more iconic college basketball players and was part of the more iconic teams ever. And he's going to be on the sideline watching his brother who, you're probably closer to it than me. Like, is he considered like a top 10 college basketball coach now?
Yeah. He is.
Is UConn like a destination job, or is he going somewhere else?
Well, I think people think Stores is not a destination place.
Is that the city it's in?
Yeah. Stores, Connecticut.
They did have, one of the more iconic coaches ever who probably liked living there, right? And made the program, never left.
Calhoun,
yeah.
One of the, I think probably like people didn't, no one was, I don't know if anyone was banging down the door to hire Calhoun. I don't think he was like as a guy. You don't hear people don't talk about him much.
No, they don't.
Won
a couple natties though, right?
Buddy of mine told me he went off and coached like D3 or junior college for like 8 years. Just loved coaching so much afterwards.
But don't the
Gino
Hurleys,
Auriemma was there for a long time.
Don't the Hurleys and the Harbaughs feel like that? Like if they couldn't do what they were doing, they'd be somewhere else doing it.
I mean, if you win a national championship, you might just there's no yeah, they do. But the question is with Jim is like, all right, Jim's sat at the big table. Yeah, Harbaugh.
Yeah.
He sat at the big table. Like when it ends at Michigan, if it ends at Michigan, is he going to coach at USD again? Would he do that? Western Kentucky?
No.
Probably. Maybe Western Kentucky.
I could see him doing that, yeah.
Co-coach with his brother? I don't know.
They just trade coaches.
Well, Chip just got one of John's defensive coaches to be his DC. Remember, because he sent Ravens DC, went to Michigan, or he wasn't the Ravens DC. He was like the linebackers coach. Goes to Michigan, coordinates, comes back.
That guy's now with Chip?
No. Different guy. Chip just got the Ravens safeties coach to be his, not just, I don't know, 2 months ago or something.
Gotcha.
But
Chip's fishing off that pier too?
Yeah, Chip's fishing off that pier, off the Harbaugh pier.
Hard to blame him. Yeah, pretty good coaches.
All right. On that note,
adios.
Later, y'all.